Hello, and welcome to another of my series of conversations. My name is John Cornicello, and I'm going live on most Mondays and Thursdays. Coming up later this month, I have Barbara Bordnick on the 22nd. Barbara is a fashion and portrait photographer and original member of the Canon Explorers of Light program. She's also a pioneer in digital imaging, producing a book on flower photography, or a book of flower photography, using the Canon D30 when that first came out. And after that, I have Eric Joseph on the 26th to talk about printing papers, calibration, and the like. You can get all the details at cornicello.com/conversations. Today, my guest is Dale Bernstein. Dale was a photo assistant to a number of legendary photographers in the 80s. He's also well versed in wet plate collodion photography. So let's please have a warm welcome for Dale.
Hello.
Hey there. First, I'd like to start by offering my condolences on the loss of your friend, Chris Hansen.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
So let's talk about the wild and wonderful 80s in New York. Um, that was about the time I was there from 79 to about 85 or 86. And I think you were coming in about that time.
Yeah, I got there in July of '84
Okay.
and stayed until about '89, and just decided I was done with assisting and just wanted to do my own work.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the folks you assisted, Richard Avedon, Irving Penn, Arnold Newman. So I understand with Richard Avedon, you were a contact printer. You did his archives for him.
Yes, that came a bit later. When I got to New York, I had a mediocre portfolio and went around seeing as many photographers as I could, and had an interview with a fellow that was doing a lot of Vanity Fair covers named Bill King,
Hmm.
and he offered me a a job part time, just working on his archives, and I wasn't at all interested in doing that. I really wanted to work for Irving Penn, but didn't have a way in. So I mentioned that to him, and he laughed, and he said he knew somebody over there, and he made a phone call, and I was able to go over and get an interview to um, spot prints
Hmm.
um, for I think it was $40 a day, which was a great living wage in New York City. Um,
The interesting
so,
thing is I have a friend in New York who's still making her living spotting prints.
oh really?
Yeah.
She has better eyes than I do. Um, so I started doing that, and after a couple of weeks, I just asked Mr. Penn if he would look at my portfolio, which he agreed to do, and um, he basically just ripped it apart. And that was the first time I had a really great portfolio review.
Hmm.
And later on that day, he apologized to me, saying he hoped he wasn't too harsh, but he felt it was best to be honest. And I assured him, it wasn't hurtful, it was helpful.
Hmm.
Um, so you really don't advance at all if everybody just tells you your work is great, and um, you begin to believe it yourself. So I knew well enough that it wasn't
Hmm.
anywhere near great or good for that matter. And but he did later that day ask if I would be interested in printing for him. So at least he saw one good thing
Yeah,
in it.
that's an honor.
So I did that for about a year, and then after constantly bugging him, he allowed me to assist him in the studio. So that was a whole different world, and um, just the best time of my life.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Always seemed like a gentleman. Um,
Yeah, he definitely was.
what were you lighting with back then? I remember seeing stuff with a lot of Speedotron equipment, but
Yeah, it was mostly Speedotrons.
hmm
and he shot with Hasselblad for the most part, um, at least the fashion and portraits,
Hmm.
and still lifes were all done with 8x10 Deerdorfs. And very rarely we brought out these Ascor sun gun and set it off with a broomstick because
Yep,
nobody
I
wanted
always joke
to touch
about that you needed a broomstick near so if you had to pry someone off the capacitor bank.
it.
Yeah, for the people who don't know the ASCORs, uh, they were a modular system with these 65-pound capacitors filled with oil that were 800 watt seconds each, and you can plug in like 30 of them and get 40,000 watt second power out of a single flash and watch the rest of the city dim.
Yeah. And the tube was about a foot long
Yep.
and about 4 inches in diameter. It was, and you plugged it into the back of a reflector. Um, it was pretty impressive.
Yes, yes. I've got the user manual for one around here somewhere, but it's on the shelf behind my foam core. I can't get to
I
it right now. But
think a repair manual might be more useful now.
it was very interesting. They called it a speed light, and they said it was portable because it was on wheels, and its
Right,
setup only weighed like 300 or 400 pounds, but it was on
right.
wheels. You can roll it around.
Portable, much like a Mack truck. Yeah.
So, what was it like being on set with Irving Penn?
Um, it was pretty inspiring.
Hmm.
I mean, he was just the epitome of concentration.
Hmm.
Nothing really distracted him. My job was reloading the Hasselblad backs, um, and just as quickly as possible, because he'd go through several rolls, for one photo.
Hmm.
Um, and with the still life work, he was mostly in his office, and the assistants would set things up, and he'd come in and uh, tell us how to make the fine adjustments, and then he'd leave the room again. And the next time he came in was when we had the transparencies on the light table. And there was a lab that would rush process his film and do clip tests. And they were just a couple doors down. So we'd have 8x10 film back in within a couple hours and
Yeah, E6
make the
process.
filter adjustments and
Hmm.
do the finals.
And what neighborhood was that in?
Um,
You remember?
he was at, well, it was 78, yeah, no, or 87 Fifth Avenue. So I think around oh, probably 10th, 11th Street.
Okay, pretty low down because the photo district really was around the 20s,
Uh-huh.
20th, 23rd, Dugal Labs, Babu Labs, the set shop and the like.
Right.
Um, F Stop Cafe.
Well, wait a minute. No, I'm wrong on the street. Um, it was, yeah, probably about 18th Street.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I worked in a few studios down in what was it? Klein Square, down
Hmm.
at 14th Union Square.
Right.
Yeah, so, but it sounds like Irving was a little more reserved than Avedon was when shooting, where Avedon was jumping around and just all over
Yeah.
the place.
Well, just the noise level in the two studios was it was polar opposites.
Uh-huh.
There was never any music at Penn's, um, and never heard anyone yelling, and he never raised his voice to anyone.
Well,
Very, very calm.
before you
Um,
went to New York, did you go to a photo school?
I took one photo course in college. I was in art school in
Hmm.
Boston,
Okay.
and just I was doing architectural drafting
Hmm.
for about 9 years and just never really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I always had photography as a hobby and just decided to give it a try. I remember the office I was working in Boston had a New York phone book, and I thought, for the hell of it, I'll just see if Irving Penn's listed in there. And he was, and I called
Uh-huh.
and spoke to his studio manager and assistant, Patricia McCabe, and she's the one that was there for about 35 years.
Wow.
Um, and she arranged just about everything
Hmm.
for him. Um, and so I just asked her if it was possible to get an interview and show a portfolio, or is the line, years long?
Hmm.
And she said, well, it's possible, but you should really be here. So it was like the next day I picked up and moved to New York and stayed with a friend in Queens. And I have no regrets.
Yeah, it sounds, Greg Heisler has a similar story with Arnold Newman.
Hmm.
He was out in the Midwest calling Arnold and finally showing up at the doorstep, and Arnold slamming the door on him, and Arnold's wife then saying, "No, go talk to the poor kid." And
I
the
could
rest
see
is
him
history
doing that.
there. You worked with Arnold Newman too, is that correct?
I did, and uh, several times in totally different
Hmm.
character. I remember assisting on a portrait of Meryl Streep for, I think it was Look magazine or Life. I don't remember
Hmm.
which, but he's uh, adjusting the lights himself, and if you were standing in the wrong place, he'd just shove you out of the way without a word. And he was telling these horrible jokes, and I looked over at Meryl, and she's just rolling her eyes. And yeah, it was, but I mean, he got brilliant results too.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, I was asking about the education thing in school because it seemed like a lot of the folks that ended up at Avedon Studio came from Brooks in California.
mhm,
It seemed like there was a train ride. You went from Brooks to New York to Avedon to something else.
right. There were a couple at Penn's from Brooks also.
Hmm.
Um, is that still open?
No, Brooks closed a couple of years ago. They went through some financial things, and then there was this whole thing about the art schools. All the art schools on the West Coast have gone through some troubles. Um, I guess I was friends mostly with people that went to RIT because there's always that
Mhm,
RIT Brooks dichotomy or
right,
competition, and Syracuse too. So I grew up in New Jersey, so for me it was the RIT, the technical side of things that I really got into.
right. Yeah, I'm kind of partial to that myself. I
Mhm.
was born in Rochester, but
Oh,
um, raised on Long Island.
uh-huh. Yeah, I
So,
was born in Brooklyn and raised in New Jersey.
mhm.
So, so folks in the audience, you have questions on what we've covered so far here? Nothing from you, Michael?
Um, I'm still trying to wake up.
I can't, I can hardly hear you.
I'm still trying to wake up.
Trying to wake up. Okay.
It was a long journey into night and morning for me. So, I, uh,
Revel in the
uh,
excitement of Mueller not talking.
I knew you would. I knew you would say that.
Yeah, I see
Um,
Doug, a few other people
so,
joining us. Go ahead.
Dale, what are you doing now?
I do commercial photography, um, and basically I'm down to one client who is keeping me so busy. I haven't had time to look for other work, and I don't think there's much work out there anyway.
You're in
Uh,
Columbus
no,
or
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis? Okay.
Mhm. Not the hotspot nationally for photography in any case, um, but also about a little over 20 years ago, I started studying wet plate photography, and I've been involved in that pretty heavily, um, and just love doing portraits with that.
Mhm.
And I've given a lot of workshops also.
Yeah, so over in the comments, John Wallace is asking, what are some of the things that you think make a good assistant?
Well, it's different for different photographers, but basically, I think being invisible um, um, and instinctive. You have to be able to anticipate what's going to be needed. Um, I can tell you one of the most annoying things that I've had with a couple of assistants is, I mean, I certainly don't claim to know everything,
Hmm.
but if I'm thinking about how to solve a problem, having an assistant start giving their opinion in front of the clients, it just isn't a good thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, basically just be willing to do just about anything um, uh, for the final product. Um,
Yeah, I think that mind reader thing is a really important, to the anticipation,
yeah,
um,
and
knowing what they're going to ask for.
I never appreciated any of the photographers who require so much from assistants, like doing their laundry and running personal errands. Um, I I don't think that has a place in a professional photo studio.
Hmm.
But there are all types of personalities out there.
Dale, what stands out in your mind from working with Avedon?
Well, as I was telling John, I didn't work in the studio with him. I was uh, printing his archives, making contact prints, basically. Um, and each each job was in its own 9 by 12 envelope with the negatives. And there were just boxes and boxes and boxes of these things. And I started with negatives from 1946
Honda Civic pictures are coming up.
and did everything through the early 70s. And after that, I wasn't really that interested in what he was doing in the 70s. Um, and this would have been about 1989. A lot of it just started to look the same to me. And I think he was just doing things by formula by then. Although later on, he started experimenting more. And he used to talk about happy accidents and just let things happen. Um, and you could really see that in his contact sheets. His his lighting was interesting. His main light was held by the first assistant and moved around all the time with an umbrella. So it was rarely in the same place uh, for two consecutive photos. Um,
Was that
so
on
just
purpose? Was that on purpose?
oh yeah, he just wanted a chance to happen.
Yeah, wasn't it usually like a Balcar head on a stick with an umbrella?
I think there I saw Balcars there.
Yeah.
I think he had Ellen Chromes also.
But
Um,
did Richard direct the lighting guy where to go, or did he just let the lighting guy do whatever he wanted?
that I couldn't tell you, but he was probably directing, certainly to some degree. And I know when he shot portraits with his 8x10, he didn't really look in the back of the camera. That was the first assistant's job, and he would stand next to the lens, and they had to be ready, in focus, and with film in the camera for when he released the shutter. And the portraits, I would have to make contact prints from the 8x10 negatives also, and it wasn't uncommon to have 30 plus sheets for one portrait. But they looked like no one else's.
Hmm.
I mean, he was brilliant, definitely.
When was the In the West series done? Was that around your time?
That came out, I believe, in '85
Okay.
because he came to Penn's studio at that time to show Penn the book. And I remember him talking about that's the only time that Penn came around the studio and into the darkroom and said, "Come on out, and
Hmm.
we're going to talk with Dick Avedon." And so we all sat around the table, and Avedon was talking about just working on the American West series. And I remember one thing in particular, how he was posing somebody and he wanted their finger just to rest on the very bottom of the frame, in a standing portrait. He didn't want it cut off even a quarter inch. And, he was definitely a it's funny. I mean, he was a control freak, but also liked to let accidents happen.
Yeah, it sounded like Avedon was pretty envious of Penn, and many times that
Well, uh, and the other way around,
really.
because I was talking with Penn one time about uh, when he started doing platinum prints, and he said it was when Avedon came to work at Vogue, and he said, "I knew I could never be as good a fashion photographer as Avedon," which I couldn't believe he said,
Right.
but because I thought he was brilliant, and
Mhm.
I mean, his work is brilliant. And he just wanted to do something else that no one else was doing at the time. And I believe that was around 1970.
Okay.
And he started experimenting with platinum printing and took that to a whole new level too.
So you're doing the wet plate collodion. Have you done platinum or palladium?
I haven't.
Okay.
Uh, I've always wanted to, but I haven't had a studio since about 2004,
Hmm.
and it's just hard to do it out of a home.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I remember some of the most beautiful platinum prints I've seen were done by an amateur, and she made 6 by 7 centimeter contact prints on tracing vellum,
Hmm.
and they just looked so rich. They were like little jewels,
Wow.
um, and I've lost touch with her, but yeah, those were just incredible.
Yeah, my wife's brother in Chicago does platinum, and he does it on leaf skeletons.
Wow.
He coats this leaf skeleton and then prints onto those, and they're available in a few galleries.
Uh-huh.
It's really interesting look.
Dale, was there a specific shoot or shoots that you were on with either Newman or Penn that just really stand out in your mind for one reason or another?
Oh, well, one with Newman was when we went to the Noguchi Museum in Long Island City, because Noguchi was one of my heroes from when I was a little kid, because I grew up with some of his furniture in our house, and that was, just thrilling, getting to meet him. And I brought along a photo I took because I had one of his dining tables in my apartment in Queens, and he he signed that for me, and uh, he wrote on it, "I made this." uh, and I mean, just meeting some of my artistic heroes was always interesting. Of course, you can't be drooling or anything, but um, yeah, it was just a good time of life. It's been downhill since, but
Uh, yeah, it looks like you're in good health.
well, I'm I'm working on it. Takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Were there any celebrities that or other people such as such as that that were perhaps very difficult to work with when you were there with Penn or Newman?
Um, no, nobody was really difficult. I mean, I did hear a story about when Avedon was photographing David Letterman, and Letterman would just kept up the cornball shtick that he did at that time, and Avedon just kicked him out of the studio.
Really?
Yeah,
Whoa.
refused to shoot him. So
Yes, look. So did you say you also worked with, it wasn't here, was it Horst?
yeah, Horst, after Penn, I actually, I think somebody called Horst's assistant and told him I was, or yeah, Horst's manager, and told him I was going to be leaving, and so he put in a word for me, and I got a call from Horst just to do freelance, not full time. But what a gentleman that guy was. Very old world. Everything everything was just looked at with such a critical eye. He knew lighting like nobody else, and he didn't use Polaroids at all. It was just a light meter and his eye. And I remember taking a reading one time and telling him what it was. And he just looked at me, he says, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah, that's what it says." And he says, "Well, we'll see when the film comes back." So no pressure there. But he was funny, and his lunches consisted of a little baggie of nuts and raisins and a glass of Cinzano. So, and he was, I think he was about 84 when I was working for him.
Wow.
And just sharp as a tack. I had to focus for him because he couldn't see very well anymore. And sadly, I heard that he went blind pretty
Mhm.
much.
What format was he working in?
That was a 2 1/4 mostly, Hasselblads and Rolleiflex SL66.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just an incredible eye.
Yeah.
And we were shooting an ad for an Italian jewelry manufacturer called Palmoletto, and they wanted him to recreate a photo that he did of, I think Gertrude Stein. No, it wasn't Gertrude Stein. I can't even remember now. I'm getting old. Um, anyway,
That's okay. Yeah.
so we set up the lighting, and she was holding a big book on her lap, and we're just fussing with the lighting, and it just wasn't doing it for him. And he just turned to me and he said, "I wish I never took that damn picture." So, he didn't like recreating things
Sure.
like that,
Sure.
but it turned out beautifully anyway.
John's asking, what drew you to wet plate photography?
I just wanted to do something different, create something from scratch, and I just loved the resolution that it was capable of. And this was before it caught on. I didn't even have a computer, so there was no online resources that I was aware of. There was no online for me.
Mhm.
And the way I got interested was I was staying at a friend's house and looking through his library, and he had a book of photographs that Carlton Watkins shot along the Columbia River in 1867. And most of them were reductions of from mammoth plates. And the resolution was just amazing, the tones, and well, Watkins was a master of composition too.
Mhm.
And I just thought I have to learn how to do this. And the next month, Shutterbug, of all magazines, had an article about Mark Osterman and his wife, France Scully Osterman. And it mentioned that they were going to be giving a workshop in Rochester. I think they were still living in Pennsylvania at the time. So I signed up for that, and it turned out to be pretty much just an introduction. It wasn't really a hands-on workshop. So I didn't come away from that learning how to do it. And a year later, I took a workshop with John Coffer, and turned out to be the only one who'd signed up for it. So that was 3 days of serious learning.
Very intense.
And I came away from that being very comfortable doing it.
Mhm. So are you shooting on large format or are you making internegs?
No, I shoot with an 8x10 camera, and mostly do whole plates, 6.5 by 8.5. And when I started doing it, I was more interested in making negatives and then making large silver prints
Mm-hmm.
from those. And then more recently, I've been doing mostly tin types for the portraits that I do, because people seem to like them on metal,
Yeah.
and they don't have to wait for me to print them either.
I have a question.
And
Yeah. Michael.
the exposures are far shorter.
Hmm.
With the tin type, I'm using a fairly modern lens, a Nikkor 210 on a 8x10 camera, and have it wide open at 5.6 and putting 4,800 watt seconds through one head.
Yeah. 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 I have a friend who does large format alternate processes here in Seattle, and he's got like two 4,800 watt second speedotrons and just pumping a lot of light out of them.
That's what it takes.
Mm-hmm. Michael, you had a question?
Yeah. Is there anything that currently exists in digital photography and digital printing that you feel has the same sort of resolution and quality as all of the wet processors?
Oh, well, I mean, I can't really speak to that, but yeah, I would imagine these high resolution, like a Fuji 100 GFX and these phase ones, and I would imagine they hold up very well.
But I think the issue I'm asking about is those cameras with all the pixels that they have on their sensors can literally blow up an image the size of a building. But the average size print really doesn't get any bigger nowadays, beyond like a 20 by 30 or 24 by 36. And certainly 35 millimeter digital cameras can handle that with incredible resolution.
And a lot easier than wet plate.
Yes. So the issue then becomes, can a digital process give the same kind of look than wet plate does?
Um, well, I would imagine you can recreate something in Photoshop. I've seen apps on phones that make it look like a tintype, and some of them do a decent job. Um, but and that's fine for some people if that's what they want to do. It doesn't draw me in though.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm not saying I could really tell the difference, on a screen, um, between a real tintype and something that's done well with an app. But holding a real tintype next to a recreation of one, I'm pretty sure I could tell the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole
Plus, I
resolution
could
thing is
probably do it a lot quicker than it would take to mock one up in Photoshop.
Yeah, the whole resolution thing is interesting. I mean, back in the old days, I was taught that you're worried about the resolution in the image plane, where the longer the focal length of the lens, the more resolution you had. Like a 300 millimeter lens on a 4x5 camera could resolve bricks on a wall a half mile away, where a 50 millimeter lens on a 35 can do maybe 100 feet away. And then the 8 millimeter camera with its tiny lens and sensor or film at the time couldn't hardly separate bricks maybe 10, 20 feet away. So I still think there's some gain to using a larger format just for
Mhm.
the longer focal lengths available.
You know what the expression Bubba Mites means?
Oh yeah.
I'm talking to John. You know what a Bubba Mites is?
No.
That's if you translate it from the Yiddish, it's called a grandmother's tale.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, talk about resolution. In analog,
Mm-hmm.
I always like pushing the envelope in terms of the resolution of film, and so there was nothing finer that I could find that would I could take Tri-X and process it in Accufine and have it look like Panatomic X when I blew it up,
Wow.
or to take Panatomic X and really push it
Mm-hmm.
beyond any ASA or not ISO, but ASA,
Sure.
and still retain the resolution of the silver halide in the negative. And I'm talking about
Mhm.
35 millimeter. So that this whole question about resolution has been turned upside down, I think, because of what they're doing to the digital sensors.
Yeah.
The digital sensors are incredible. If you if you take a look at what for example NASA is doing with sensors that
Mhm.
are like just
Yeah. You're making me think I need to invite Katine onto the show to talk about this stuff. I don't know if you know Katine.
so
He's out in
you're say it again.
the name Katine, Ctein. He's did all the matrices for dye transfer
Uh-huh.
printing in the year, and he's a scientist, and he's really knowledgeable on all this technical jargon stuff. So hey, I'll see if I can get him to come on the show, and we can talk about where things are going with resolution. Because I
I
know
always assumed it was pronounced Stein, but
no, it's Katine. Yep, I've known him for maybe 30, 40 years. Going back to CompuServe. He was Max Darkroom in the photo forum on CompuServe.
yeah, I know he's written a lot of articles for
Mhm.
magazines.
I'm reading stuff over the last 4 days now that this new iPhone that Apple has come out with has just incredible resolution now built into the sensor, that the talk out in the street now is that in a lot of cases it's going to be the death knell for a lot of the camera lens manufacturers. The Nikons, the Canons, the Sonys, who's ever left.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I was just playing, my wife has an iPhone 11 Pro, and I was experimenting with it last night and I was really quite impressed with the results of it.
Well, this 12 is supposed
Yeah,
to
the
even
12 is even
surpass
better.
that.
Right. Yeah, we'll see where that all goes.
Dale, were there any common traits, talents, habits uh, between all of the famous photographers you work for?
Yeah, I'd say the main thing was preparation. Um, they'd spend a lot more time preparing for a photo than actually shooting it. And it made all the difference. And that was right across the board.
Was it just technical preparation or knowing the client or knowing the subject and
Well,
studying
a
them?
bit of both.
Mhm.
Who was the most fastidious?
Um, oh, probably Penn, I would say.
And then who came next?
Um, well, Horst could be pretty fastidious, and yeah, those two. And I'd say I I probably had a better time shooting with Horst than anyone else. He just I don't know, just his personality I just really appreciated.
Mhm. Were you always interested in the portrait side of things or did you do still lives in it too?
Um, I was very much interested in still life.
Hmm.
Um, and when I opened my own studio, that's mainly what I was doing, was
Where did you open the studio?
in Indianapolis.
When did you leave New York?
Um, I Well, I left New York in '89. Then I went to Boston for a year, and then moved to Indianapolis for a year 30 years ago.
Why Indianapolis?
Well, my family was here.
Oh, okay.
So John Wallace is asking if they all had good interactions with the sitters.
For the most part, yeah, they were all very professional, and Penn was probably more personable with the sitters than with the staff.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, he said to me at one point that I don't want to be anyone's father, and he just wanted a professional staff. And who can blame him?
Yeah, yeah. I've seen stories or things of Penn where he lived out on Long Island and he'd get all dressed up and travel on the train into New York and then change into jeans in the
Yeah,
studio to work and then get dressed up again to travel back home.
yeah. Actually, I never
He
saw him in anything other than the jeans and the jean shirt.
Hmm.
Um, and except that there was an opening in 1984 for his show at MoMA, and he was wearing a tuxedo for that.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was always the Penn uniform.
Yeah, I've got this little booklet that was produced after his death as a memorial that's photos of him and working. The last time I was in New York, I stopped at the Strand bookstore and they had a table of magazines and pamphlets, and it was in
Mhm.
there for like $15. It's like, grab this and run.
A great bookstore.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Anyone else in the audience have questions some on?
Dale, have you ever done stock?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, it's a tough world, especially now. Stock is are given away. I mean, there's these sites where people can just upload images for free for anyone to use. That's really off the wall.
Dale, what are you gonna do when you decide to pack it in?
Um, well, I'll probably keel over before I decide to pack it in, because I'm just going to have to work the rest of my life. So
Yeah,
do it
I
as long as I
understand that.
can.
Even if I didn't have to work, I have to work. I can't not be photographing, like I'm in the process of retiring from the business side of it, but I still keep going with these things and shooting my own personal projects and the like, and I think that'll go on. I don't know what retirement means.
Right.
Hey Dale, it's Kevin Raber. How are you?
Hi, Kevin.
Hey, we're fellow Indianapolisers. I've got a studio down at the Stutz, and I run Photo PXL website. So,
Uh-huh.
be cool if we can find a way to get together sometime if you like dropping by for a coffee or a lunch.
Sure. We've actually had coffee together.
Yes, we have, but it'd be nice to get back together. Yes.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I watched the videos you do with Jody and
Yeah. The drinking videos. We haven't done many
Yeah.
of them lately.
yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. We were actually just trying to figure out how we can actually do it without doing it on Zoom. So we're
Uh-huh.
discussing alternatives. Anyway, life's good more or less. It's difficult times, but we're moving forward on a lot of things. But it would be nice to catch back up now that we can do that and come on down and we'll have a lunch together or something.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So John
Your work's
Wallace is
great, by the
asking,
way. Yeah.
what's that?
You said just wanted to make sure he knew that I thought his work was great. It's really
Yeah,
nice.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right.
yeah, good to see you, Kevin.
Yeah. Good
Um,
seeing you, John.
So John Wallace is asking if you have some examples of your wet plate work that we can look at.
I just happen to have some.
Good.
Let me see if I can do this without boring you too much with
Oh, no.
some color work too. All right. Oh. Let me just go through some here. Yeah, this is some of the work that I did get to show to Penn. I shot it in September of 2000 and made prints and mounted black glass ambrotypes and hauled it all to New York to see if I could get any galleries interested. And so I met with several galleries and a few museums, and they all seemed interested, but of course nobody committed to anything. But I was showing it to Peter McGill at Pace McGill, and he seemed to love the work. And I told him I was trying to get in to see Penn to show him what I've been up to, but I couldn't get past his new assistant on the phone. And he said, "Oh, I'll call him for you." So Peter McGill called him. I could hear him, and he said, "Penn, you have to see this work. It really blew me away," and which I thought was pretty amazing coming from him. So he said, "Get up there or get down to his studio now, and he'll spend a few minutes with you." Excuse me. So I got there and he opened the door and he said, "I only have a few minutes. I can only look at a few things and then I have to go." And I had about 30 prints and maybe 20 ambrotypes, and he stayed for the whole thing.
Wow.
So, but this was his favorite image, and this was taken on the Columbia River in Oregon, and the background is Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, these are mixed with some digital and film images also.
Okay, great.
So anyway, I'll just go through some of these. And this was an ambrotype also. this was done in Indianapolis. And I had driven by this for years and always wanted to photograph it, and finally dragged all the equipment and the darkroom down there. And it was an overpass, and this little building was all boarded up with the "Welcome to Indianapolis" sign right in front of it. So anyway, and these are some of the portraits. And I just like juxtaposing the old with the
Mhm.
new.
Very nice. I like that.
You don't see these things anymore. Germ carriers.
Wow.
And this was along the Columbia River. This goes way back.
These are fun portraits.
I was driving a school bus for a school in Germany for kids with hearing loss.
Wow.
This was in Scotland, way back in the 70s.
Mhm.
That's a real mishmash of things here.
I like that.
This was in Paris. In Sebastopol, California.
Mhm. These are great.
So, do you like photographing liquids?
I haven't done any action photos with liquids since I left pens. We were doing the Clinique ads with water splashing on things.
Like that previous shot of the bottle,
The one with all the
all the
The
water
bubbles on it?
droplets on it.
Yeah.
Bubbles or water droplets?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then also further back, you have something that shows like a fluid, blue water.
Oh, that was a piece of Venetian glass,
Uh-huh.
just with the light coming through it. I did photos for an auction house that had a lot of Venetian glass pieces,
Mhm.
and I just had a blast shooting those.
Yeah, at the very beginning, you had a couple other still lifes, like some combs and things there that were really interesting.
I can go back to that. Let's see.
Sure.
That Venetian glass, I thought I thought I was looking at Hero.
Yeah, this reminds me of a number of different people. Even Ruth Bernhard did things like this.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, this was just something I set up in my windowsill in my apartment in Queens.
So those are shadows underneath.
Yeah,
Really, really nice. I like that.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even here is just simplicity. It's like flames coming coming out of them.
That's one thing that
And
Penn really made an impression on me with, was just keep it simple.
Hmm.
Um, so
Great.
keep going.
So what is this piece?
this was for the Indianapolis International Airport, and it was paper airplanes.
Okay.
And the rest, it was just a plain blue background. I did everything else with lights and reflectors.
Wow. Very nice.
And that was on film. So
Hmm.
luckily we had a very anal retentive art director who had to make the paper airplanes perfect. So, and they needed to be.
Yeah. I thought it was an illustration. It was done so well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, kind of airbrush looking.
Hmm. Great.
And this was a composite of about 30 shots. Um, I mean, they didn't always, it didn't blend very well, but I like that fact because the subject worked out very
Yeah,
well.
he looks great there. Very cool.
And something I did for a florist
Hmm.
with a little Hasselblad flex body. And let's see.
This has been great. So we're at the top of the hour now. Is there anything you want to leave us with, or anyone else have questions they've been meaning to bring up here?
I just want to say the work is outstanding. I'm kind of floored.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, Jim says some of this work reminds him of Man Ray, and this has really been great.
One of my heroes.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice.
Beautiful work. Thank you.
Yeah, this has been really enjoyable.
Where do you, excuse me. You gave me your quote. Where do you see all of this going? The industry in general, and specifically your work.
My work, probably a dumpster, one day, but
Why?
it's so hard to tell what's happening in this world.
Huh.
You just can't predict anything. I wish I could say, but
Do you
the
have an
world's done.
agent or a gallery that you work through?
I don't. I've tried getting galleries. I think the town I'm living in is not the best for photography, either commercial or fine art. I mean, occasionally there are things that happen, but for the most part, it's just very tough here. And of course, traveling anywhere now is impossible.
Do you have a website?
I do. And it's dalebernstein.com.
That's it? That's easy.
That's it.
Okay.
That's as clever as I could be.
And is it a selling website?
No, just showing things. And because I really don't, I'm not really set up for printing pieces. I have quite a few boxes of prints I've
Yeah,
made.
So what do you do with all of the images you've made? That they're just stored in boxes?
Pretty much behind this curtain.
And say the magic word, that duck will come down too, right? One of those two. Have you ever thought about just doing a test to see if some of the images that you've got? Now, I'm assuming that what you've got are no more than like 4 or 5 pieces of the same thing.
Right. Yeah. The my 20 by 24 inch prints. I don't even have that many of each one.
One of one.
Or 2 or 3 at the most.
So that could mean some interesting money.
I'm listening.
That really could mean a lot of money, because how many photographers nowadays are doing one of 9, one of 250, and calling that a limited edition.
Right.
Give me a break. Uh, 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 I mean, even Avedon and Penn and Newman uh, have more copies. They were making copies, all right,
Yeah.
than you currently have of some of your pieces.
Right.
That could be some very interesting money, but you know, it's the old story. If a tree falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound. You got to be able to test the waters to see who who's interested,
Hmm.
And how,
and make it known that it's a one of three, a one of one. I don't imagine that any of your pieces are more than 5 or 6.
Right.
I mean, even the smallest could go for a lot of money.
Hmm.
so how do we
Well,
get his name out there?
Well, his name is out there
Okay.
because he has a website already. I mean, you're certainly not doing this to do weddings and bar mitzvahs, right?
right.
Okay. So all you need to be able to do is to put another section on your website that says first time ever, extremely limited edition wet plates, tin types, you know, one of a kind. And
Yeah.
just
Well, that's
put it
a.
out there. Put it out there on Facebook. Put it
Mhm.
out. Put it out there on what are they? Instagram. Um, just do it. I mean, I don't care if the town you live in has 4 people in it. With the internet,
It's the
remember,
world. Yeah.
well, everybody forgets that it's really www and what that stands for.
Hmm.
Worldwide. Okay. So when you put something out there from your house in the middle of nowhere, somebody in Paris or Tokyo or Brazil is going to see that and come up with a lot of unique come up with a lot of unique words that I don't know how to describe this. I realized that, I mean, with everybody that's selling prints, I decided I was going to look up the different words in a thesaurus, what meant to buy. And I came up with the word acquire. So when you look up acquire fine art photography, I'm number 1. When you look up acquire fine art photography, impressionism, I'm number 1.
Hmm.
Just it's the uniqueness of the words that you're trying that gets you to come up to the top. And by the way, if 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 you don't come up to at least page 3 on a Google search, nobody's going to look for you any further.
Right.
You know, because each page has about, I don't know what, 50 to 75 other people that are trying doing the same thing. So look up um, unique words. And I would think that with your background with Penn and Avedon and Newman and Horst, that you could come up with words, a word that was used from back in the 40s or 30s or 20s that nobody even remembers what the hell they were.
Right.
That's a unique word.
Hmm.
But you got to get out there with this stuff. I mean, you're sitting there with boxes of these images that are onesies or twosies or foursies. You could be sitting on a fortune. but you won't know this until you test the waters.
hmm
And right now is a very good time.
A
Very,
lot of
very good
people
time.
online.
A lot of people are online, and a lot of a lot of people are buying stuff. You know, what we do is no different than the stock market, and we're living in a very depressed industry right now. You ever hear the expression "buy low, sell high"?
hmm
Bingo. So I know that art galleries in Manhattan, they're closing up left and right. They can't afford the rent, so they're going elsewhere. And the internet has become inundated with people trying to sell stuff. How do you and so how do you get people to like even come to you? It's called marketing and advertising. And the marketing end of it and the advertising end of it for us has to do with a word that's going to inspire somebody to go to your website, and then of course the images or the products that you're showing. This is no different than advertising, only we're trying to do it on a very more sophisticated level in terms of fine art.
Right.
Oh man, you need to do it. You know, even if you were to do what was done to you by Penn and Avedon and all the others, find some young person who has taken some courses in marketing and advertising and let them work on what you've got and come up with something. I mean, you got nothing to lose. You're not doing it now.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
some bright person who is looking to become an assistant to a Penn, an Avedon. I mean, you were getting how much were you? I don't think Penn or an Avedon were paying you a lot of money.
No.
Okay, well, that's a what's the word? That's a something that we all had to go through on our way up. You know, $40 a day to do spot retouching, and John said that he knows somebody that's doing it the same spot retouching now.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask at the time, but my coffee hadn't kicked in yet. They're probably getting paid the same $40 a day.
I was going to say probably half of that now.
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't know what she
yeah,
gets. She
well-
does some still top name photographers that she works with. I can't think of the names right now. Her name is Judy Schiller.
You know, unless I don't mean to sound like a putz or some sort of an elite SOB, but
Not at all.
unless there is a name that is a upper crust, I don't really know a lot of people. You know, I may know their images, but I certainly know Penn. I certainly know Newman. I mean, a whole litany of people like that, because that they were people that I wanted to aspire to.
hmm
But if you told me James Smith, who maybe has one or two pictures that to their entire collection of creativity, and it's very, very difficult now for anybody to reach the height that Penn, Avedon, Newman, Sarah Moon, Helmut Newton, very, very difficult. Why?
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
because of the iPhone. Everybody's a photographer.
hmm
And I'm not putting a bummer on Apple for what they did, because they certainly improved photo imaging, but the industry has changed. Absolutely have changed. I mean, I know people that have iPhones that are doing so, making incredible images. And I was like, how did you do that?
Well, there's certainly a place for uniqueness, and what you have, Dale, what you have here, of course, is very unique and very shows a great deal of talent.
Yeah.
And the marketing and public relations of what we do is probably the most difficult thing of what we do. Unless you get into a, or when some years back, I said I wanted to shoot fashion. And I think I mentioned this when I was interviewed. And the consultant I was working with said, you live in the wrong place and you're too old and you don't go to the right parties. So, and that was that. So to some extent, that's probably certain, fits where you are also.
Yeah.
But there's a uniqueness to what you do. And what Michael is saying is probably right. It's just a matter of getting out there and just sitting down and actually trying a way to exploit it.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm never right. I'm left. I'm a Democrat.
Yes, I'm aware of that. We
Thank you
both.
very much.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
So yeah, there's a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, so
But anyway, your work is just astounding.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Certainly deserves to be seen.
yeah,
Appreciate
I
it.
mean, after this,
One last thing.
Mhm.
I mean, I knew Arnold Newman very, very well,
Mhm.
very well. And Arnold, one comment Arnold always made was that stuck with me forever. Once you create the image and make it, nobody cares how you got from position A to position Z. It's the final image that makes that they care about.
Mhm.
No one cares if you had to sit there with a brush or you had to mix chemicals or pour it onto wet plates. Nobody cares about that. Those days, that ship has sailed decades ago. What's more important now, well, even when Arnold was around, was great shot, love it. And people say, how did you, what camera, what lens, what aperture, what film? Who gives a?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to clean this up. Who gives a flying whatever? Do you like my image? That's it.
Yeah. That's
So I have
all that counts.
see,
That's
and
fine.
so getting back to you, I mean, I have a feeling you understand what I'm about to say. I have Rachmanis for you. Verstehst Rachmanis? Because
That one I don't.
a heartache, all right, sadness. Because how long does it take you to set up that wet plate, that tintype, in order to take this this little picture?
It's
A long time.
couple hours anyway.
Now, in reality, even at $20 an hour, let's say it took you from start to finish 6 hours to make that one print, and you will sell it for how much? $120? That means you broke even. Isn't your time worth something? You have to think in terms of a businessman, and I can tell you from experience, we as image makers don't know shit about business. And that was the French word that I used. It's cheap. All right. We're all bad businessmen.
yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Disagree with Michael to some extent.
For a change?
Yeah, you.
Okay.
I'm going to take the case of a young man. I think of his name in a minute. He actually got his start because of the Palm Springs Photos Festival. He did a large wet plate prints, and David Fahey saw his work and was pretty impressed. And of course, we all know who David Fahey is. And David brought him into the gallery and started and did a show with his work, and it became very successful. A very famous actor became involved who loved the works, and part of the sales process was the interest and the excitement of learning how he created these images. So it wasn't just the image itself. It was the the process that the collector in this particular instance and other collectors were interested in how the work was created. So there's a sales value there as opposed just to the end product. So that's the extent I'm going to disagree with Michael in that regard. And again, this his name was Ian Ruther. I think that's what it is. R-U-T-H-E-R.
Ruther.
Oh, you know who I'm talking about?
Mhm.
Yeah. And the actor who took an interest in his work, who also ended up starting to come out to the Palm Springs Photo Festival also, I'll think of it. But anyway, I think part of the process is interesting, and I think whether it's just guys like myself who find the process interesting, I think the collector also does. So I would not discount that at all. So getting there with an iPhone is not as sexy.
Well,
Too many words for you, Michael, or what?
well, no, I'm trying to digest and comprehend. I mean, I know photographers, some pretty big name photographers that are now using, in conjunction with their regular cameras, iPhones. And they take those files and they put them in Photoshop, and you wouldn't know the difference. You would not know the difference.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been following Russell Brown from Adobe. I mean, he's been doing these iPhone with his Pro Photo lights the past couple of months and some amazing portraits.
Yeah, but
Haven't seen those.
forgetting the portraits, because the one sticking point I have with the iPhones is that you're stuck with that lens, and if you're doing portraits the way we were all taught to do portraits, is anything 80 millimeter lens and probably out to about a 150 is a portrait style lens.
Sure.
But I always say, but you could literally use a 50 millimeter macro or a 35 millimeter lens, depending on the subject matter you're shooting. I mean, I don't think that I want to do an actual portrait of a lion with a 35 millimeter lens. All right. It goes back to something that Ian said, Ian, whatever you want to call yourself. Remember, you were too old, you were too bald, you were too heavy, you were too this, you were too that. But wait a minute. All right. If you're looking at a photograph of something, does anybody really know your gender, your age, your weight, your height, your hair color? No.
Well, no, but it's a matter of getting business. And that's different. And that's different. Surely, I could be, as old as I am and as bald as I am and as deaf as I am and shoot the photos I shoot. But a matter of going to the right parties and living in the right place and being younger, the business is just not going to come to me.
Well,
anyway, the
wait a minute,
actor who I was thinking of was Gary Oldman.
Okay.
And I remember when Ian Ruther was putting I happened to be in David Fay's gallery on that day when they were mounting the show, and Gary Oldman came in, and I overheard the conversations about how interested he was in the process, and he was so interested he eventually he started coming to the Palm Springs Photo Festival. Anyway, moving on.
Who was having the conversation with Gary Oldman?
David
owner of the
Fay.
gallery?
David Fay.
Now, I agree with you to a point.
Well, let me interrupt. And also Ian Ruther was there. Is that his right name? Am I got the name right? No, they were there, and Gary Oldman was very interested. And ultimately, actually, I think Gary Oldman had Ian Ruther come to his house and they became buddies. So there was that interest that got created. and again, disagreeing with Michael, um, that was because of the uniqueness of the process.
Hold
So
on.
I think that's important.
But it was also the uniqueness of how David was explaining to a client about this image maker and the process, and that David Fahy was using words that are specifically inherent in a an art gallery, explaining things to a client. A photographer would not use the same language.
Yeah, I'm kind of old school in that I've always felt that an image should speak for itself.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons I got into, that attracts me to photography is that a single still image can say so much that doesn't have to be explained. And that if it needs an explanation to make it interesting, it's not interesting.
But you're the artist. And
Right.
so there's a disconnect between the artist and a client. And the thing that brings that disconnect together is the marketing agent, the gallery owner who makes that. And by the way, the gallery will take a minimum of 50% of the sale of that print.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The stock photo industry used to be a 60-40 split. The photographer used to get 60, the stock house would get 40, and then it became a 50-50. And then all of a sudden, it became a 70% for the stock house and 30% for the photographer. And we all used to say, why? And their answer was, well, we do the promotions, we have to do the talking, we have the computers, and on and on and on. And our stock shooters used to say, wait a minute, we're buying the cameras, we're buying the lenses, we're taking the trips, we're doing the flights. Oh, and the stock industry went down into the toilet.
Yeah, but on the other side of things, and in the art side, especially at Phase, all of a sudden, Ian Ruther's prints are going for $20,000,
Okay.
$30,000. So being in a big gallery with a serious representation, the money and the career changing that can be is extraordinary. Even Mel is represented by Faye, Mel Sikowski.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone is. So anyway.
Well, anyway, this has been a
moving
great
on.
conversation. I've went in a totally different direction than I originally thought it would, but I'm really enjoying this. But later this week, I've got Barbara Bordenick coming in on Thursday, and Eric Joseph next Monday, Joe Baraban on the 29th, Tony Corbell and Skip Cohen on November 2nd, and Greg Heisler on November 16th. So keep watching this space and see what else we add to it.
Wait,
Dale,
Tony
yeah.
Corbell is doing it along with
Skip Cohen.
Skip Cohen?
Yeah, they're going to tell their war stories of over the years of all the people they've worked with.
Okay.
That should be
Thank
fun.
you for doing this. This was really great. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Any
Really
last words
enjoyed it.
from you, Dale?
No, I just really enjoyed it and enjoyed
Thank you.
meeting all of you. And
Dale, get those images out on the internet, man.
my wife would love to talk to you.
Hey,
Was
you
she-
know what? You know what?
She'll be unique.
I'm a lonely kind of guy. Tell her to send me an email,
Okay,
and then we can chat. Honest.
sounds great.
Good. I'll hook you up an email afterwards.
Terrific.
Terrific.
Great. Well, thank you all. This has been really fun. I'm going to
Thank
shut down
you.
the Facebook first
you.
here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good
It's a
one.
pleasure.
Be well, everyone. Which
I'm gonna be-
camera's on? Thank you.
Thank you.